Hello, Fairly Secret Group. I'm David, your host. I don't think I've told you that before, but today I am going to tell you my favorite prog bands and the favorite albums by each band. First off, we'll go in alphabetical order. Today is Anecdote. They are a band from Sweden. They started off life as a King Crimson cover band. They had a cello player, who also plays mellotron, bass player who sang, drummer, and guitarist who eventually sang. Earlier stuff sounds a lot like Starless and Bible Black King Crimson, and the vocals are kind of an acquired taste. I really like the bass player's singing better than the guitarist singing, but the guitarist is good too. I just kind of miss the bass player singing because he did it on this one. That's right, I have speakers to hold up my thing. And this one. And my two favorite are From Within, which ended up having a lot of mellotron. The cello ended up going out of the songwriting, and From Within, it's really intense and dark and moody and just awesome. And my other favorite is Gravity. These two are like brother-sister albums with the mood. Actually, they're twin albums. Actually, the mood is dark and a lot of heavy mellotron. By this time, the bass player stopped singing, except for on one song, I believe, which is my favorite song. I can tell you what it is. This is their newest album, 30 pieces from the time of day. So I'm kind of going over a little bit of a discography of a band that you probably don't know about, but telling you also my favorite albums. So I'm kind of killing two birds with one stone here. Strangely enough, why do I have my sticker, the used sticker on there still? That's right. Bill Bruford, Gradually Going Tornado. I had this on vinyl, and the song Age of Information would skip at first. I didn't know it. It turns out my needle, instead of being straight like that, it was turned a little bit like that. So the music goes dun 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 dun, or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But it changed measures of 4 into one measure of 7 because that needle was bent. When I put the needle forward, it played properly. So I would purposely bend the needle so I could hear it with the odd time. Bill Bruford has said he doesn't know really what he was thinking, letting Jeff Berlin sing on this album. I met Bill Bruford once. He was playing at the Dakota in Minneapolis for Earthworks. And what I should have said to him at that time is, you were a genius for letting Jeff Berlin sing on that, because Jeff Berlin's voice was awesome. When I started getting into prog rock, I got into Genesis Foxtrot first. Well, actually, no, I didn't. I picked up the live album, which I did not grab because that is one of my favorite Genesis albums. But for studio albums, Foxtrot, you cannot go wrong. I have 3 different versions of this album on CD, partially by accident, partially by choice. I didn't actually purchase this one, which is the original, and then I did purchase the definitive edition remaster. I like listening to them all and seeing what the differences are. My second favorite Genesis album is Nursery Crimes. Also, again, same situation. 3 different versions. Original, CD, remaster, and remaster and the box set version. This is Selling England by the Pound. Apparently Dan decided to write his name on it. I got this one used for my nephew, who ended up selling a bunch of his CDs, and he said you could just take all of them, and that's why I have multiple copies, especially of the original things. Selling by the Pound starts out with Dancing with the Moonlit Night. Greatest intro song ever created. So amazing. This is when the band, again, all three versions, this is when the band was firing on all cylinders. Actually, for these three albums, they were firing on all cylinders. That was the top of their game, honestly. I do not like Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I have 2 copies of that also. But it just didn't seem like the same band. I like when Peter Gabriel left, when Phil Collins took over, those 2 albums after. Then I think they kind of drop off. I have them all, but not my favorite stuff, because it's more pop, you know. It's not really a prog rock band anymore. Phil Collins was one of the greatest drummers, especially greatest prog rock drummers out there. He was a monster. He was so amazing, and Steve Hackett is possibly the most underrated prog rock guitarist out of all the prog rock bands. I just love his playing. He was very creative. I think he really stepped forward on the albums after Peter left. But his playing on like Musical Box and Dancing with the Moonlit Night are just astonishing. My next band, which I have also multiple copies of things, Gentle Giant. Octopus is my favorite album out of all of theirs. I have this version, which is the first version of the album that I ever listened to. And here, let me just too much. There we go. This was brought to my attention by Kai from the band Bubble Math. If anybody knows, they are a cuneiform album band, or at least their last album was done on cuneiform. And at one point around 1998 or 1999, before I had ever heard anything by Gentle Giant, Bubble Math were looking for a drummer, and I met up with Kai, and he lent me this album and the Charming Hostesses album, which had members of Idiot Flesh or Sleepytime Gorilla Museum. He lent me this album, and I was just blown away. Just the playing, the vocal stuff that they do on this album is so intricate. John Weathers, oh my God, John Weathers, this is his first album that he was on, and let me put this one up again. He basically would hold the whole band together. They could be doing whatever the hell they want, and he would have such a solid backbeat and just in the pocket, and he is the most underrated prog rock drummer, because not only was he keeping things very straight against amazing, intricate playing, but when he needed to, he could show off with the best of them. You know, Bruford, Phil Collins, any of those guys. The second favorite is Power and the Glory. Again, I have multiple copies of this. I have the EMI a la carte version and the DRT version. The cool thing with the DRT version is it had rounded corners, just like a playing card. I liked that. You didn't get that. You got this weird, like, you know, you can see it's not cut out. It's just a little black behind there. So Sincere and Proclamation are so amazing, but the real gem on this album is Cogs and Cogs. I love that song. But my favorite, I said Octopus is my favorite studio album, but I think this is the best example of Gentle Giant just absolutely untouchable, is Gentle Giant playing the Fool. Again, two different versions I have of it. I have the DRT version and the a la carte version. There is excerpts from Octopus on this album that is so thought out, how they transition from part to part and song to song. There's extra guitar stuff, and if you have never seen the Giant on the Box video, they have a DVD where it has them playing 2 shows live. Wait, is it 2 shows live? I think it's just 1 show live, but it's fantastic. The bass player, Ray Schulman, plays acoustic guitar with Gary Green, and could those guys play more instruments? The guitarist played recorder and guitar. The bass player also played violin and recorder and acoustic guitar. The singer also played bass and recorder. The drummer played vibraphone and obviously drums. And the keyboardist played cello, the vibes, recorder, and every keyboard under the damn sun. It was fantastic. Shoot. My stuff got messed up. Where are you? There you are. So, next up. I'm trying to do this fast so I don't waste too much of your time. Hopefully you enjoy these videos. In 10th grade, which was a long time ago, I was going through my brother's stuff. He had moved out long ago. He like 20 years older than me. And in his vinyl collection, he had Jethro Tull Aqualung. I had heard Aqualung and thought it was a pretty cool song. I had maybe heard Locomotive Breath, but until I listened to this album, I didn't know anything about them. First of all, you have Aqualung, which is a fantastic song, and Clive Bunker was just a phenomenal drummer, and I would be interested in finding out what he would have come up with on the following albums had he been in the band, but he fell in love with somebody and took off. So we get Barrymore Barlow after this album. Even on the tour, it was Barrymore Barlow already. And if you don't know who Barrymore Barlow is, if you have heard Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force album, he played drums on that, like in the 80s. And then I'm not even sure what else he had played on. I know he's played on a bunch of stuff. The Jethro Tull stuff is the best, and he was a phenomenal drummer. But even he says the advice he gives to drummers these days is don't play so much, because he played too much on Jethro Tull stuff, and he said it was just really too complicated to remember every night. It was too much work, I think, is what he said. So, in this album, you get Cross-Eyed Mary's the second song, and I remember the Iron Maiden version of it and not liking it very much. But this version is pretty darn good. Good use of Mellotron. But the key to this album for me is Mother Goose, Wandering Aloud, and Up to Me, the trio of acoustic songs. They pull you in and just made me love this album so much. The other albums that I just adore are Stand Up. This is more of the blues-based stuff, less prog rock, but, you have Boree and Nothing is Easy, very rockin' stuff. Boree is actually a classical piece put to a band setting. It's it's all instrumental, flute. If you've ever heard it, goes. Anyway, so this is the hidden gem, Heavy Horses. Heavy Horses is the album that I was waiting for them to do the 5.1 surround sound, and I have it, and I just haven't gotten around to listening to it. This is part of the trilogy of Songs from the Wood and Stormwatch. Kind of back to nature kind of feel. And Ian Anderson's lyrics and the writing on this album is just phenomenal. I highly recommend giving this one a listen because most people haven't checked this out. Next up, King Crimson. Originally, the first album by King Crimson I heard was Beat. I bought it in 1992, and I thought Neil and Jack and Me was great, but didn't really like the rest of it. In 94 or 95, I started working at a CD shop in Minneapolis called Cheapo, and my coworker Dave Martin got me into this band, especially this album. The intertwining guitars that Adrian and Robert are doing are fantastic. The fact that Bill isn't playing a lot of cymbals, which was per request of Robert, I guess, makes some really interesting drum parts. The stick parts, I don't think really we had gotten anybody playing stick like that, even on the earlier the Peter Gabriel stuff. And then after he did this album, then everybody wanted him to play stick, and that was 2011, sorry. This is one of my favorite King Crimson albums. Along with this is probably a desert island album. The whole idea of what are the 5 albums or 10 albums you could take on a deserted island, and In the Court of the Crimson King is almost a 100% album, except for Moonchild. I don't like the fiddly improvised stuff at the end. I guess Greg Lake refused to even partake in that. The other highlights to me in the King Crimson discography is Thrack, because this was the same year that I really, really got into them. And I saw them at the State Theater in Minneapolis, and coworkers and friends burdened me with the responsibility of getting tickets. I thought I was going to get absolute crap tickets. Turns out we had, like, right in the middle, 10 rows back, perfect for seeing everybody play. It was amazing, and the State Theater has great sound. This album is amazing on headphones, especially I like the remix that Steve Wilson did. Lark's Tongue and Aspic. I didn't get into any of the 70s stuff until I worked with my friend at a CD store, and one day he brought all the 70s stuff. We started listening to everything from In the Court. We got to this, and within 20 minutes after listening to this, I had ordered everything in the King Crimson discography. It took me 3 years to get into the 70s stuff. I don't know why. What was I thinking? It was just bizarre. Boom. Magma. A lot of people do not know who the hell Magma are. Magma are a French band that did songs in a made-up language called Kabayan. They didn't want to sing in French. They didn't want to sing in French. They didn't want to sing in German or English. So it's kind of a mashing of French and German. This album particularly has more of a jazz feel to it. None of their stuff really fit what most people call prog rock. This is a subgenre called Zuhl, and they were the originators of it. There are a bunch of other pretty damn good bands, like Shub. Gosh, what are they called? Shub Nugaroth, Wargier, and I don't know. Just look up Zuhl. It's Zuehl, I think. They all have weird names that are hard for me to pronounce because I speak in English and I can barely do that these days. The other highlight of their career is MDK, Mechanic Destructive Commando. This really takes over the Zuhl sound. The Zuhl sound is very vocal heavy, a lot of chanting, kind of like Carmina Burana by Karl Orff is a good example of the idea behind it a little bit. Drums are the driving force. Christian Vander is amazing. He's still going to this day. They keep on putting out new stuff, although there hasn't been one in a while. But they are still touring. It is mainly, I think they have 2 keyboardists now, a vibraphone player, bass player, guitar, and 3 or 4 vocalists. Check this album out. If you don't like it, you won't like anything by them. Well, that's wrong. But they also have an album called Attack, which has a Giger cover, H.R. Giger cover. That's also a good place to start out. This band is probably the kings of around this era, were the kings of the neo-prog, which was 80s prog that kind of had that Genesis and Yes kind of vibe to them. Marillion used to have a singer named Derek W. Dick, also known as Fish. His first solo album is fantastic. I do like all of his other solo albums. Vigil in a Wilderness of Mirrors is the album to get. But this was when they started out, and if you are not familiar with this album, it starts out with him singing, "So here we are once more in the playground of the..." And if you're not familiar with Peter Hamill from Graaf Generator, he did this album called Over, which shows up on the back cover of this album, Fugazi, which was the follow-up album to Script for a Jester's Tears. And right on the floor in this painting is this album Over. He has a song called Autumn where he sings, "Here we are alone." So I don't mind. I love the fact that he took that melody and decided to start this album with it. If you didn't, tell me you didn't. You know, if it was just a coincidence, awesome. It's a good coincidence. So, my favorite Marillion albums are Fugazi. I think this one is a little bit more polished. This is when Ian Mosley comes in and starts playing drums, and the songwriting is kind of more bitter almost. It's weird. It's almost like it's a paranoid album so much, you know, just kind of, and you can't trust anyone. They have a song called Assassinating. What does he say? What do you call assassins who accuse assassins anyway? My friend. So this one is just awesome. Actually, all 4 of these albums that Fish played on were awesome. This is one of the best concept albums ever made. There are 2 tracks basically on the whole thing. They do split each side up. When it was on vinyl, the only reason it had a split between side 1 and side 2 is because you had to flip it. They still left that in there, but I have a feeling it would have went all the way through had it been made today on CD. Heart of Lothian is... Waterhole is one of my favorite songs on here. Every track connects to the next, so it's like one big track on each side. They did the same thing with the first 3 songs on this album, Clutching at Straws. This is also a fantastic album. This was the last one with Fish. Then Marillion did Season's End, and then Holidays in Eden, which is actually my favorite post-Fish album until Marbles. Marbles is a double album that they did in the early 2000s. They had a lot of people driving around with this image on cars, I believe, in England, and they got a hit single out of this, which was called Don't Hurt Yourself. And this album was the thing that brought me back to Marillion. I kept on getting the albums, but not really listening to them a whole heck of a lot. This album starts out with the song Invisible Man, which is like 12 minutes or something like that. And disc 1 also ends with Ocean Cloud, which is like a 21 or something like that minute album or song. Sorry. And those 2 songs just pulled me right back. Primus, Frizzle Fry. If you know anything about Primus, you'll know Jerry was a race car driver, or Tommy the Cat, or My Name is Mud, or Winona Has a Big Brown Beaver. But if you are not listening to Frizzle Fry, you are totally missing out. I should have probably not left this in the stack. I should have done a different, like, kind of weirder stuff, but it's here anyway, so let's talk about it. This has some of the craziest playing by Les Claypool. His bass playing is just amazing, and he eventually started playing fretless bass on the My Name is Mud album. What was that? Pork Soda. He then said that he stopped playing it because he had to concentrate too much, and I totally understand that. This album was huge for like indie rock people, like the whole Lollapalooza thing around when Tool were first coming out and Jane's Addiction was around. It was a weird combination of really good players performing to people that really didn't get into prog rock. So it kind of opened up their minds. I think it did. It opened up my mind, but I was already open anyway. Let's move on to Rush. Used sticker. I don't know why I bought a used copy, because these are so cheap. This was in 2007, so anyway, Permanent Waves is one of my favorite albums by Rush. This is kind of one of the ones that really got me into Rush. I was working at a Target, actually, and this guy named Steve Peterson lent me not only Misplaced Childhood. He was the reason I got into Misplaced Childhood, because he lent me that on cassette. But he told me, yeah, you should get all of those Rush cassettes that are like $3 or whatever. So I bought this and Moving Pictures and a few other ones, and I was hooked. And in the 80s, let me see, 1 second. 1984, they put out Grace Under Pressure. I got into Rush the year Presto came out, or the year before Presto came out. But Grace Under Pressure is one of my favorite Rush albums. Distant Early Warning, Red Sector A, After Image, just amazing stuff going on. Very keyboard heavy, but still keeping everything that I loved about Rush going. The year I got into them is the first year I saw them. I saw them on this tour and the Vapor Trails tour with my sister Janine. I went to Presto with my friend Rob before they pulled down the place that the Mall of America is now standing. I'd much rather have a place to go see Rush. Anyway, this album was amazing, and my favorite song on this whole album is what's it called? Available Light. I always think it's Red Tide, but it is Available Light. And there is a part at the end chorus where he never plays it before, but Geddy Lee starts playing this, and he only plays it for like 2 or 4 measures or something like that. He never plays it before, he never plays it after, and it is one of those key things that happens just once in a song, kind of like Men at Work, Land Down Under, where he goes, oh yeah, yeah, and that's the part you wait for, and that is the part I wait for, and it brings tears to my eyes every damn time I hear it. It's so freaking great. This album is totally underrated. Test for Echo. The key with Test for Echo is to watch the DVD of Neil Peart breaking down every drum part and then going back and playing every song with the backing tracks, or the guitar, I should say, the guitar tracks and the bass tracks. Just to see how and what he is doing, and then to watch him then put it all together into one cohesive piece of music is amazing. All right. This is a weird band. They are part of the rock in opposition movement in the 70s. Their first album came out in 1977. It was called 1313 originally when they put it out on Cuneiform. There are 2 versions of the first 2 albums, yes. So this is the remastered version. This is the original version, and my wife, because let me see if I can get, you see him on the far right side. She calls it Weekend at Bernie's. This guy wasn't even in a wheelchair. They just thought it looked creepy having them in this muddy black backyard and this guy in the wheelchair. That was the bass player, and from left to right is the guitarist, the oboe / bassoon player, the drummer, and the violin / viola, I believe. This is a fantastic version of the album. This is the original mix. And then I am not sure. Whoop. This is bad video. Let me just find the information. The remix, I can't remember the guy's name who remixed this. I know this guy, the guy in the wheelchair, the bass player, doesn't like this version. He said that I don't know, it didn't capture the stuff that the original version had. I will agree with him. There's a bass part on the song Jack the Ripper that isn't as apparent, and it stands out on the original one. By the way, this album has 3 songs on it, and it's close to, let's see, 16 and 25, so what was that, 41 minutes? 3 songs, 41 minutes. The first song is 25 minutes and 25 seconds. That really builds, and it has some really creepy, weird vocals. This is also the album my friend Brandon said was the creepiest album he had ever heard. The second song is Jack the Ripper. That is a 13-minute song. And the last one, which I cannot pronounce because I can't remember. I don't know if it's in French. They're a Belgium band, so whichever language they speak in Belgium, I don't know. I'm really bad with other languages other than this half-assed English that I do. 1302. 1302. This version of the album has a live version of a song called Chaos Hermetique, and I highly recommend them. They also had an album called Use It, and another one called with a French title. It starts with a C. Those are amazing albums too, but I forgot to grab them. Graaf Generator. Peter Hamill was in Graaf Generator. They had a sax player who played 2 saxes at the same time. They had a keyboardist and a drummer. And Peter Hamill played mainly acoustic guitars. He eventually started doing electric, but he also played piano, and now the newer stuff that they've been doing as a 3-piece without the sax player as Graaf Generator has mainly guitar, keyboard, drums, or two keyboards and drums with vocals. Still Life is what I think is the perfect Graaf Generator. It has Pilgrims, which is a lot of people highly regard that song, but my 2 things are Still Life and La Rosa. Those 2 tracks are perfect, and they go back to back. The last band is Yes. You can't talk about prog rock without talking about Yes. That's right. I skipped ELP because I don't have any ELP because they never really did anything for me. Although I love Greg Lake in King Crimson, not really a big fan in ELP. Close to the Edge. This is a album that I had on cassette, and for some reason, when I was younger, like early 20s, I think, I would play Close to the Edge almost every time I showered for like 3 weeks. I don't know why. But that was way back when I had hair and it took me longer to take a shower or to dry off or whatever. But Close to the Edge was fantastic. It was my go-to album, and this is the one where I think John Anderson really shines vocally. I've always kind of thought that he was, and here's where I get a bunch of enemies, the weak link in Yes. This is the last album with Bill Bruford, who said, what were we going to do? Son of Close to the Edge? Chris Squire, oh my God, that guy is just a monster. I really like Fragile too, but this album beats that one out for me any day. And one of my other favorites by Yes is Drama, the album with without Rick Wakeman or John Anderson. This had the guys from the Buggles. Goodness, what were their names? What were their names? I'll just put that up while I figure this out. Jeff Downes and Trevor Horn. Sorry about that. I'm not very good at this yet, but Drama is a fantastic album, and I think I like it a lot because John Anderson isn't part of it. So, those are my favorite prog rock albums, or prog rock bands, or discographies of prog rock bands. So I hope you enjoyed this. Leave some comments, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. I'm going all over the place musically. I don't know what the next video will be like, but it should be here soon. Thanks.